Welcome to Love What You Love. I'm Julie Rose. I'm insatiably curious about people in the world around us and absolutely in love with passion and unselfconscious enthusiasm. Every other week, I geek out with someone about the thing that they love, and then I share it with you. Welcome back, or welcome. The world is being pretty worldish lately, isn't it? Let's just spend a little time focusing on love, shall we? Meenoo Mishra was in need of a hobby, something to do with her hands, and the result is something absolutely beautiful. She creates handmade jewelry, inspired by Indian and global myths, legends, folklore, and nature. I loved chatting with Meenoo about her passion. We talked moonstone, fairy tales, Roman glass, Art Nouveau, broken jewelry, red carpet designs, and so much more. So find out why Meenoo loves making jewelry, and why you might learn to love it too. Hello, Meenoo. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you. I love your shop on Etsy. It's Meenoo Bazaar, and you make the most beautiful jewelry. So I just want to understand, how long have you been making jewelry and what got you started?
Yeah, I guess it's been, let's see, what is the year? I started making jewelry, I think, in around 2009. And at first I've always, I love jewelry. I wear jewelry, almost every day. And at that time, around 2009, I had moved, there was a cross-country move, and I had been living in Tucson, and my husband and I left Tucson and we moved back to the East Coast because that's where our families are from. And I was sort of in the middle of, looking for jobs and trying to get settled, and I needed a hobby. I needed something to do, and I had never really kind of worked with my hands much, but realizing that that's, I think, exactly the kind of thing I needed to do. And so it really started off, my mom, I have two sisters and my mother, and between us, we have a lot of jewelry, and she, no one throws anything away. And so all this old, jewelry had been piling up, and she needed help. She wanted my help organizing it. And so that's how it started. I started organizing the jewelry, and then decided that I could fix a lot of the jewelry that was broken or missing pieces, or, earrings missing their other earring. And that kind of started me in my passion for just working with jewelry. And I just learned some techniques and decided to then open up an Etsy shop.
Did you go through some other things to say, I need a hobby? Or did you know right away it was going to be jewelry?
Well, I think it had been a while since I really fell in love with something, just being able to create something with your hands, being able to envision something and then, see how you can actually create it and make it a reality. All of that was very exciting to me. I had mostly, as I mentioned before, I hadn't really worked that much with my hands. And I, that whole, I think people who work with their hands really understand this. And it's not new to them at all, but for me, it was new. And that I really loved that so much. And I thought that, jewelry is also something that, you can just kind of make it, how do I say this? So okay, I should back up a little bit. One is that it felt like something that I could do without much help. I have a disability, and so a lot of the kind of hobbies or crafts or art, I felt like it was not as available to me growing up. But this, I felt like it's something that I could do, everything on my own. And so that I realized, thinking now, that was very attractive to me.
So knowing that that was something that you could do without anybody else, getting involved, I'm just interested too, like, is it a different kind of mindset from other hobbies you've had or from the kind of work that you've done? Or you said, people who work with their hands understand. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I'm a huge reader. And so, a lot of it is like living in your head, basically. I think that's what I was trying to get at. A lot of it is living in your head, whereas making jewelry, it is definitely in your head, but you can actually see it take shape. I think that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. I noticed like when I wrote for a long time and then that it's such a head thing.
Yeah.
And then I started doing like watercolors and it's like bypasses all that stuff and goes right into your hands.
Yes, exactly. And your books are wonderful. I have read them. So I I admire that so much, being able to, create a world on page, of course. As readers, that's like the best thing ever. And so there is that, but then I think just actually seeing, obviously books are objects too, but, in a different, jewelry's different, you wear it, so.
Yeah. So now maybe you could talk about like what kind of jewelry you make, what kind of materials you use, and kind of the ethos behind what you make.
Sure. So I started off, really wanting to use a lot of the pieces that weren't being used anymore. So a lot of the pieces, I took a lot of vintage pieces from jewelry that my family had, mostly my mom, my sisters, some for my sisters. And so it was a lot of Indian jewelry. We just had so much costume jewelry from India that we would, get from our trips or or as gifts. And part of it was just wanting to give these, broken pieces some new life. And by broken, I don't, mean super badly broken. It's more like, some, maybe an earring was missing its friend, or, a necklace was missing a few beads or things like that. Everyone has tons of broken jewelry in their like dresser or whatever. So it was like that. And also I really wanted to play and explore ideas of like, behind like Indian jewelry and wanting to make them. Indian jewelry can be very ornate, and it's known for being very ornate, and I wanted to be able to kind of simplify it more so you could wear it. Nothing wrong with wearing super ornate jewelry, but I at that time especially I wanted to make more simple pieces that I could wear with my like, American clothes. And so that was kind of the impetus. And just, once you start making stuff, you get inspired by so many things. So I was, very much inspired by, seasons, nature, Indian gods and goddesses. And I loved kind of creating pieces inspired by those different elements.
So how do you bring those elements into your jewelry?
Well, I would do some research, on like colors, like for goddesses, for instance. I made, and I have, Lakshmi is a very, kind of famous and important goddess. She's a goddess of prosperity and beauty, and she's mostly, shown in reds or pinks. And so, using those colors, to portray her. Lotuses are very important, so I would use, lotus charms or pendants, and that's just one example. Another, like Durga, she's also a very important goddess, and there's a lot of red, fiery colors, red, oranges, yellows. So I would use those colors to create, something like bold, with more gold and things like that.
And so you do necklaces, you do earrings.
I do mostly earrings and necklaces, and every now and then I do make bracelets. I'm trying to really get into making more bracelets, especially I think with the pandemic. I don't know. I mean, everyone has changed the way they dress, I suppose, and with mask wearing, it's kind of harder to, at least I find it a little harder to wear earrings with masks. So yeah, so I have made a few bracelets, and I need to I need to make more. But I love making earrings. I love wearing earrings. I love making them. Necklaces as well, but I think earrings is really where my heart lies.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know. I think they're just, I like things that frame the face, I guess. Earrings, they bring attention to your face. And the one good thing about bracelets, which, that's something that the wearer can see right away on their wrist. I know if you're wearing the earrings, you can't really see them unless you look at yourself in a mirror.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I've always, that's my own personal, I love wearing earrings. I could wear a different pair of earrings like every day. So
I love it. That's awesome. So now what are your favorite materials to use when you're creating jewelry?
Yeah, I love, I love lots of different materials. I love, I do use some gemstones. I love, moonstones and labradorite. Those are really my favorite. Garnets as well. I love garnets. Pearls, although I haven't used pearls as much recently, but I do love pearls. I love Swarovski crystals. I use quite a bit of those, and I love check glass. Come in so many different shapes and colors and finishes, and they're also light. I do try to keep especially my earrings light. A lot of people don't like wearing heavy jewelry and earrings especially. And so using those those materials keeps them light. I also like vintage lucite. That's actually a plastic, but it's a very like hard plastic that they, and then they used it to make kind of really pretty beads, ornate. A lot of times they're kind of etched with gold designs and things like that. So when I find beads that to me look Indian, whatever that is, I will use that. Actually, that's one of the first things that I used in my jewelry when I started making jewelry is vintage lucite. I do love using vintage materials when I can, and so I do search for those as well, and also vintage Indian pieces.
So you would take a vintage Indian piece and kind of work it into an original design?
Yeah.
How does that process work?
Well, to me, one of the most Indian kind of very recognizable design is a jhumka. So those are kind of the bell-shaped pendants. They usually get made into earrings. And on the bottom, they usually have quite a few holes in the bottom that you can dangle things. So one of my designs that I'm actually quite proud of, I wanted a pair of, I love celestial jewelry as well. And so I thought it'd be really beautiful to have, most of the times for jhumkas, they have little, colored beads, or they have, like little bells. That's also very popular. But I decided to kind of dangle stars interspersed with, like sapphire blue, vintage rhinestones. And so I thought those were really pretty. So they look just kind of like a cascade of stars, and I have them in the gold plated as well as silver plated. So, just kind of whatever it's, again, with any design, you live very much in your head. So, but I do love using jhumkas and to me, when I use those, that just feels very like I'm making Indian jewelry. Another kind of, I look for components with Indian jewelry. So any like peacock motifs, of course, that's very Indian to me. If I find peacock motifs, I will use that. I'm sure there are others I can't think. Oh, another big one is the enamel, like it's called Meenakari. So that is this like technique of enameling that's also used in Indian jewelry. They usually are in like really, saturated colors. And so if I find like vintage pieces of those or new as well, then that I will use that. So I have a couple of pairs of earrings that use those as the main focal point, but then I use like other like pearls or Swarovski crystals and I just like to combine things together. Whatever works, works.
I love it. So now you mentioned kind of looking for different materials. How do you source your materials? Like, where do you go to get this stuff?
Oh, yeah, that's actually one of the most fun parts of it. I mean, just really online. I mean, before the pandemic, I would also go to gem shows.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of, I mean, you can find, as I'm sure you're aware, anything online. So I'll just, search for things online and see what I find.
Sometimes you're just looking for like Indian pieces or inspiration. Maybe walk me through, like, how do you get your inspiration? Is it you're just hanging out and you go, oh, I'd love to make a blah, or maybe you see something in a magazine. Like, where do you get that spark that says, oh, I got to make a piece of jewelry like that?
That's a good question. So I should also say that I have some Indian pieces in my shop, but for a long time, I haven't made that many Indian pieces. And so I make a lot of, I mean, I'm Indian American, so I make a lot of pieces that aren't as Indian. And so a lot of stuff I really like making, kind of thinking about the seasons and what inspires me about each season, and try to make jewelry according to that as well. So yeah, and with jewelry or any kind of like, just, you're always thinking a season ahead. I'm not as quick as other people. I do take more of my time. But for instance, right now I'm thinking of, spring and summer jewelry, like any collections I want to put together. And also in terms of inspirations, I also really love Art Nouveau. And so I try to make a lot of, it's just naturally, I'm very inspired by those like organic shapes, very nature oriented, very much inspired by nature, flowy. And so I love making Art Nouveau inspired jewelry as well. And so for spring, I love working with like leaf shaped beads and, kind of this greens. And, I think I love gardening as well. So I love botanical style jewelry. So I think my shop has veered more into that direction the past few years. But I am trying to kind of go back a little bit more and bring more Indian style stuff, but also in the larger kind of botanical themed jewelry. That's kind of the next thing I'm sort of obsessed with and wanting to work that out. I do work, I have a full-time job. But I work from home. So I'm, even before the pandemic, I worked from home. And so I am lucky because I don't have a commute. And so I generally do work in the evenings, kind of after dinner and on some family time. Then I'll, not every night, but frequently, especially if I'm like, really taken with an idea, I will work in the evenings. And yeah, I have my own, office / studio space. And so I'll just sit down and, put like, I'm kind of obsessed with ambiances that you can put on your computer. So I'll just put on an ambiance thing or not, depending, and just play around and see, if it's coming together, if I feel like I'm missing something, if I can find something that I'm missing, or if I can use what I have, kind of all, and of course I also think about what's been popular, in my shop, what's sold, and, try to put it together that way. And in the weekend mornings, it's also inspiring for me when I feel quite rested. And so that's a good time for me to work on things, just the kind of the creative part of it. So yeah, I do try to like sit, even if I'm not feeling inspired, I do try to kind of, a lot of times if you just sit in the space and play around with things, something will come up. But I'm not as fast of a designer, to be honest, as I'd like to be. I'm a little slow, but it is what it is,
Do you sketch it out first?
Yeah, sometimes I sketch out the design that I have in my mind. And, or just write down like words that I'm, associating with the design or the concept. And then I'll just kind of go from there, with the colors or mood, or I think people wear jewelry because it makes them feel, beautiful or significant or means something to them, or, or they want to feel like a mood of, at least that's how that's how I wear jewelry and look at jewelry. Like, or what kind of character do you want to play? So I kind of think of that too. What kind of character would wear this, these earrings.
I love that. That's so cool. What's your favorite piece of jewelry? Maybe it's something you've made or something you got from someone else.
Yeah, I have, of course I won't have just one.
Of course.
The stuff that I've gotten as gifts, by people who really know me. Mm-hmm. I have this one, and this is going to make me want to go and like wear all the jewelry all at once after we're done with recording. So I have a beautiful Roman glass set, necklace especially. I don't know if you know what Roman glass is. It is glass that was found in archaeological sites from the Roman era. And they're usually, you can just Google it, Roman glass, and you'll find, you can get beads or pendants. People sell them. They're not like, it's just a lot of them, they've kind of turned like a pale turquoise color. I don't know how, like just with the passage of time or however the glass was made, or I don't even know what color the glass was when it was originally made, and what the glass came from. But anyway, people find these, and so I have a necklace with a big piece of Roman glass that I really love. I have some Indian, I have like some Indian like real gold necklaces, earrings, but most of my stuff is not like real. I have a beautiful ring that I love that has a garnet in it, and it's like it looks, when I saw it first, it looked like branches kind of just curled around your finger, but it's actually a mandrake, which is an herb, and like a mandrake root, and it's very cool. I really love that ring.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, I just I have a lot, and then I have a few vintage pieces that I bought myself. One is I love anything that's kind of has like an iridescence, so like anything with like an opalite, or that's why I love labradorite or moonstones, because they have that sheen, that iridescent sheen where the colors shift. So anything that has that, I'm very much drawn to those. So I have like a vintage piece that has just connected with that kind of, I think it's glass. It's not even like a moonstone. It's just glass, but it's so pretty, and I feel really like a fairy queen when I wear it. And
I love that. Well, and speaking of fairy queens, another part of where you get your inspiration, you're inspired by folklore and fairy tales. So maybe tell me a little bit what that's about.
Well, I think that's related very much to, first, I love fairy tales and folklore. I always have. And I think that's also, like I said earlier about making jewelry inspired by goddesses, that to me is also part of folklore, fairy tale world, as well as myth, mythological. So that I think also, goes back to what I also said earlier about feeling like you're part of a story. And what do you want to wear? If you're going to do the specific, if you want to feel like you're in a fairy tale, what kind of jewelry would you want to wear? And so that's the kind of, I guess, vibe that I like to at least myself be in when I start to create and think of collections or think of pieces. And so any stories, or, kind of looking at larger themes of also like symbols and motifs that, for instance, like rose and thorn, that's very fairy tale to me. Keys, doorways, ivy, flowers, to me that's very speaks of fairy tale. I have made pieces that have been specifically like characters from fairy tales. So I've made Briar Rose, and I've made like Snow White and Rose Red, kind of like Wicked Queen jewelry. Also a favorite. I have a good friend who's a writer, and so she's written quite a few fairy tales. So that's another, like with folklore, I love Indian folklore, of course. And so like they're like creatures, beings in Indian folklore. Like I try to make jewelry that maybe they would like to wear. For instance, like yakshinis, though they're kind of like spirits or beings that live in forests. And so I wouldn't call them dryads necessarily, but they're close to, I think, a dryad. And so like what would they wear? Kind of thinking of it that way. Or apsaras. They are celestial dancers who live up in the sky in a celestial court. So, what kind of jewelry would they wear? And they would be very different. The colors would be different. The feel of them would be different. So things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm like, just keep talking, because that sounds amazing. It sounds like you don't have any problem with inspiration. But is there a kind of jewelry that's harder to make than other kinds?
Well, I mean, yes, of course. And I should say that I mostly work with with beads and wire wrapping. And so that is, depending on the kind of gemstone and the wire wrapping, that can be a little more difficult. But I like to focus a lot more on like the colors and design and proportion. And so if I have like issues, I think or like the puzzle, trying to figure out the puzzle of the, of the design, that's where I will probably struggle the most. And I think that just depends on, like with anyone trying to create something, how you make what's in your head into reality. I think it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
But I would love to learn how to work with polymer clay. That's one of my art goals, and I should really hopefully this year I should learn kind of techniques, and that will be, I worked a little bit with polymer clay before, but mostly in a class, and so wanting to really play with it and kind of make it my own and see what components I can make using that, I think would be very challenging, but also very rewarding, I hope. So that might be my next kind of journey in jewelry making.
Let's say that you got into a TARDIS or another time travel machine. You could go anywhere, anytime. Where would you go just based on the jewelry?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think, a lot of the very, beautiful stuff was created for, royalty, and people with money. And so I would, of course, I would love to, I would love to go, well, okay. One thing that I find found really, that was actually very moving for me. So I had gone, back when I was going to museums, if they had like a jewelry section or exhibit, I would always go to see that. And I remember this was this was when I started making jewelry, and I went to see, and I wish I remembered the museum, but I remember it was, ancient jewelry. And I noticed that like the way that, the way that they made the jewelry, I'm not talking about the metal part, but like the way that the wire wrapped a bead to dangle from, say, the metal, it's exactly the same. It is exactly the same way that I do it, and that's how I learned. And it was just so cool to think that someone, like thousands of years ago could, was using the same technique, using pure gold, probably, I mean, not pure gold, but, using high gold content wire or, silver or what have you. But it's the same thing. It looked exactly the same. And so that was very thrilling for me, even it just was like, I'm not a metal smith, so I'm not, making like metal components for my jewelry. But the fact that it's the same and that you can see that over time was very cool. So I guess, I would love, I mean, I'm someone, I would love to be a time traveler. And so I would love to go, in the past to see all kinds of ways that people made pretty things and jewelry to adorn themselves or, make as gifts or adorn, royalty. Ancient times, I would love to see ancient Indian jewelry. I would love to see where that Roman glass might have originated from. And, I would love to see a medieval era, like especially like, I'm thinking Florence, Renaissance jewelry, just any. And then I would love to, go not too back in time and just see how they, places where they made the Art Nouveau jewelry with the beautiful like lilies and all those gorgeous designs that they used to make, the jewelry back in, I guess, early 1900s. I would love to go back in time to see, parts of the Mughal Empire, but it's all about like going to people's workshops and looking at. That would be fun.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of adorning oneself, I mean, how early, I guess we don't know exactly when, but like how early do we have a record of humans adorning themselves with jewelry?
I wish I knew, but I know it's old. I really feel like ancient humans walked around and looked at rocks. They looked at rocks and they were like, this is a good rock. This is a good rock for doing all these other things. And, making arrows or, making mortar and pestles and like grinding things, right? You need rocks for that. But then I bet they also found rocks that looked special. Rocks that looked, that sparkled or looked pretty and, had different colors. And I really think that it's just a thing that we just have. We like to adorn ourselves. And so I don't know. I haven't, I can't say like when. I don't have those facts or anything, but I think it was long. It's been a long time.
Yeah. I believe it. Yeah. So obviously you love making jewelry. It's, something that's very exciting for you. What kind of parts of it do you not like? Like what are the challenges or the parts that you just kind of like, oh, this is a drag?
Well, like I said, I mean, it can be frustrating, I mean, even though it seems right now like I have a ton of ideas, a lot of times I feel like I have no ideas, or I feel like, it's the same thing I've done before. I don't feel like, sometimes I struggle with, feeling like I don't have anything new but, so that part's hard. I mean, the other, I think, part that's difficult is just just having a business, this is a side business, but it's a business of my heart. And so it's, it can, has its ups and downs, just like any, and so, that, I think that's the hard part, but, also, marketing, that's hard for me.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. So, but that's all stuff like more skills that I can learn and everything. So it does feel amazing when someone actually wears your piece, like wears the thing that you made. So that feeling is very special to me.
Oh, that's gotta be a thrill. So this is kind of a silly question, but if you were invited to an awards show, Oscars or whatever, which of your pieces would you wear? And if you could do jewelry for somebody going to an award show, who would you want to do jewelry for and what would you give them?
Oh my goodness, these are very good questions. Well, I mean, if it was an award show, I feel like I need to maybe make something a lot more. I would probably wear my celestial jhumkas. Now that I think about it, just having a fringe of stars dangling from the jhumka bells would be very cool. So I'd probably make that, or I would just make something new, depending on the dress, right, that I would wear. And oh my goodness, I don't know. I really have to think about who I would want to dress for or to provide jewelry for. That's such a great question. To be honest, it would probably be like an author or someone that would be super fun. But I can't right now think off the top of my head. Yeah. But again, I would probably, see what, they were wearing and ask about what colors and what designs they liked. And that would be, I would probably focus on the necklace, depending on the neckline of what they were wearing, and then do earrings. So it would probably be a little different than what I would normally, because I normally focus on earrings first. But I think I would probably do it the opposite way.
So just to kind of wrap up, if someone was listening to this chat and they're like, oh, that sounds like so much fun, I totally want to get into making jewelry, how would you suggest they get started?
Well, first, of course, it would just be, what skills they would like to learn. And I think, it's okay and encouraged to just play around and see what you like to do. I have taken classes, in jewelry making. I did one that had, I think it was wax casting, where you can make, your own pendant, but you use wax first to make to sculpt the actual piece, and then it gets cast into metal. And that was really cool, but I couldn't, while I enjoyed it, I just couldn't see that I would do that as part of my business. I think that would be something that I would do very occasionally, but I couldn't imagine kind of creating my whole business around that. For me, it probably wouldn't have worked, but someone else might love it. So I would definitely encourage them to play. And of course, metalsmithing, some people make incredible, art that you can wear, which is how I see jewelry. It's art that you wear. And so, or like me, I think I love colors a lot too much. And not that you can love it too much, but I love colors. And so that, unless you are ready and have access to, lots and lots of gemstones, which how amazing if that were the case. I think I wanted to stick more with beads, different kinds of beads. So yeah, I would just encourage them. There's so many classes that you can find if people wanted to learn that way, or of course YouTube videos, right? So yeah, I would, and then just trying to figure out what your kind of sets you apart. I think would be good to just think through.
Ah, awesome. Well, Meenoo, thank you so much for taking so much time to chat with me about this. This has been an absolute delight.
Thank you so much. I haven't had the opportunity to talk about my jewelry for this long, so thank you for asking such awesome questions and making me think about this.
You can find Meenoo on Facebook and Instagram at Meenoo Bazaar and at her website, meenoobazaar.com. That's MINOUBAZAAR. I'll include links, of course, in the show notes, as well as links to Meenoo's favorite nonprofits, and mine too. Huge thanks to Meenoo for sharing her passion with us today. Just a reminder that you can find this podcast on Instagram at LoveWhatYouLovePod, on Twitter at WhatYouLovePod, and the website is LoveWhatYouLovePod.com. All of the transcripts for Love What You Love are available for everyone on the website, thanks to Emily White, transcription magician and proprietress of the Wordary. If you need transcripts, reach out to her at emilywhite@thewordary.com. The music for Love What You Love is called Inspiring Hope by Pink Sounds. A link to that artist is included in the show notes. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let's hang out again soon.
There's some good in this world, Mr. Fertile. and it's worth fighting